When you look at Florida as an example, you have thousands of boats out in the ocean, out in the intercoastal, thousands of boats, and they're all waving the Trump sign. Thousands and thousands, you've seen it. And they're so proud.
Hello, friends. We're back again. It's Chapo coming at you. It's me, Will, here. And on deck for this afternoon, we've got Felix, Matt, and Virgil. Gentlemen, how are you?
Hey.
Great to be here. I'd like to kick off this week's show with a little election coverage, specifically Joe Kennedy III versus Ed Markey. And I wanted to bring this up because I saw a clip of their debate last night. Like the first thing, like when I woke up in the morning, bleary-eyed, reached for my phone, decided to put some poison straight into my brain as I normally do every morning. I mean, like, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I get most tilted at things like if I see it first thing in the morning. Like the
Oh yeah, no. Every time you see, me getting in trouble because I yelled at somebody, it's because it's the first thing that I saw when I woke up. Every public feud that I've had has started that way.
Yeah, it's like the further I get into the day, like the chiller my tweets and interaction with social media get. It'll be like 7, 8, 9 o'clock, and I'm just like, posting screenshots from Deadly Premonition, being like, yo, like the Francis Zach Morgan storyline really touched me, bro. I didn't think a video game could make me feel like that.
Yeah,
but in the morning,
yeah,
I'm just looking up. I'm just doing like GIF searches for like sniper rifles, and then just forcing myself not to tweet them. But I just want to begin now.
I'm with you. Like, I'm so chill. Like at night, unless I have evening rage, midnight madness, or like the afternoon, I'm fine. Unless I have like midday anger, but. Yeah, no. The morning, I can kind of guess what you saw this morning.
Okay, let's share this clip. This is from a clip from last night's debate between Joe Kennedy III and Ed Markey. So let's just take a look at and keep in mind this is their opening exchange. This was like the first thing they were asked about on stage. So let's just roll that clip of Joe Kennedy.
Everybody for tuning in. I don't think that that's what happened at all. There were supporters of mine that tried to put together an event that were targeted. One of Senator Markey's supporters literally tweeted that bullying works. And that this is an issue not just because of what we saw at this event, but it's unfortunately been a bit of a history with regards to supporters of mine in this race. Senator Markey's supporters have targeted Sheriff Steve Thompson, one of the highest profile black elected officials in the state. They've recently gone after 4 of my Hispanic colleagues in the House of Representatives.
All right, Congressman, that's
well.
time. But we want to...
It's happening again.
Okay, so just for the context of that, the very first question Ed Markey was asked at their debate last night was about his online supporters bullying Joe Kennedy.
Woo!
Woo! And like, okay, so first things first. Joe Kennedy III talks so fucking fast. Like, he's got Ben Shapiro cadence. Like, he doesn't have the high pitchedness of Ben Shapiro's voice, but his speech patterns follows Ben Shapiro's almost identically.
The difference is he sounds like a high school kid trying to talk his way out of a DUI because his dad knows this police chief.
Observation number 2. Like you'll see who's clearing his throat in that, and then like if you look at several other clips from that debate, like Joe Kennedy is just like like coughing into his hand throughout most of the time that he's trying to speak, and I'm just wondering, how does someone with a mouth that wet have a throat that dry? Like, where is that wetness coming from? Is it just like is he just licking like fruit before he goes on stage? Does he have like sort of syrupy like resin around his mouth?
All of his throat moisture goes to his lips. It's a genetic condition. It's fucked up of you to be mean about it.
I mean, like, it's just this Joe Kennedy guy. I mean, like, I don't know. Like, last time I checked, Joe Kennedy III was leading Ed Markey in this race, and by all accounts,
I've heard. I haven't been paying too much attention, but I've heard that it's looking like it's closing up.
Okay,
like,
all right.
All right.
After the initial after the Innsmouth fish people of Massachusetts saw one of their elder gods emerge from the ocean, their immediate instinct was to start worshiping him. But over time, they just noticed that even for a great old one, he's just too creepy looking.
Yeah, I've expected Kennedy to win just because it's the worst outcome. I honestly expected something weird to happen, like he wins the nomination but loses to a Republican who like later gets arrested for like trying to defraud somebody through Bonzi Buddy, and then they hold another special election and Martha Coakley finally wins. That was my general prediction. But yeah, he could blow it. He has all the ability in the world to blow it. Some Kennedys kind of have it, like they have the Kennedy drip. I mean, he literally has drip, but he just sort of scans as an overeager fuck up to people, and that could be a problem to him.
And you know why? You know how you could tell that he's one of the fuck up, non-charismatic, non-good Kennedys? He's still alive.
Yeah, no. All the Kennedys who have the Kennedy drip, well, it gets on a steering wheel and
I mean, just last week he was doing one of those front-facing camera videos of him driving around like this guy's percentage, like his batting average for like spitting most platitudes spat out of his wet ass mouth per minute is higher than any other politician in America. It's shocking, but he's behind the wheel of a car talking into a phone while he's driving. Like, as a Kennedy, like, come on, dude, like, just keep your eyes on the road, buddy. Stop talking about fucking like the hopeful futures that you see in the eyes of your youth supporters.
Yeah. He's trying to be like a woke car guy.
Kennedy's platitudes, I mean, he makes the Buttigieg, lighting up the gymnasium with phone speech look like a Michael Parenti talk.
Oh, God, yeah.
What did the fact checkers say about the debate? Does bullying work?
I think it depends on the context.
Okay, but I mean, is he claiming that bullying doesn't work? Because I think it works. I think it makes you feel bad.
Well, all you need is a couple of counterexamples of bullying working, and his whole thesis is exploded. And I don't think that'd be very difficult.
Bullying has historically worked on Kennedys. John F. Kennedy got bullied to death.
Yeah.
Robert Kennedy.
Sam Giancana couldn't stop bullying Kennedy.
Well, that's the real thing the Warren Commission covered up, was that Kennedy self-harmed to death.
But
he was cutting long before the Dallas trip.
You can't say that Texas doesn't bully you, Mr. Kennedy. I think this clip is significant, though, because, I mean, regardless of the outcome of this race, it just seems like this was the first question Ed Markey got at this debate. And I think this was like maybe the first debate that they've had that was televised. And I think this is significant because it's just like, I think it proves that like what happened to the Bernie campaign was not just a one-off thing based on the fact that Democrats didn't regard Bernie as a Democrat or just didn't like his personality or found him pushy or too Jewish or too shouty or too Jewish. But I mean, I just think it just shows that the template is there for like, this is how you defenestrate a more progressive candidate when you are, a soulless husk with a wet mouth.
But
it's the online support of the bullying thing.
Like, we talk about bullying, and that I think there's plenty of examples of that working, but I just still am not convinced that ever actually worked on anyone. That I don't really think it's why Bernie lost. You can make maybe a case in 2016. I absolutely don't think it was the reason for 2020. But these people are chimps, and so they see something that is correlated with something, and because of the chimp brains, they make a causative leap.
I don't agree with insinuation that Irish people are chimps.
No,
I think that's a little too far.
Apropos of nothing, I would love to find a Thomas Nast conjuring spell.
Hey, did you guys know that Joe Kennedy III, his dad is Joe Kennedy, his dad is Joe Kennedy II, but his grandfather is RFK. Joe Kennedy I is the elder brother who's idiotically smashed his fucking bomber plane into the side of a mountain during World War II and was never able to be president. So RFK, like, in tribute to his older brother, named his kid after the brother, but like exactly the same name. So he was the second Joe Kennedy. Is that legal?
The Kennedys, they paid off the courts and changed the naming system in Massachusetts because they didn't want the word Jew in any of their names. Everyone's the second.
It's just weird. It seems like if you're the third, you should be the third in a row.
But to your point earlier, Matt, like I don't know what to the extent that this like narrative about cyberbullying had any effect on any voter, but like I think it just shows that whether it works or not, it's just like the template is set, and like
it's a thing for them to do, and that's all they really have to do is sell their candidates on a plausible strategy. It doesn't matter if it works because there's no real way of knowing. It just has to be something they could point to having been used somewhere else in a campaign that won, and they're halfway there. Because they're all fucking fraudsters, essentially, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, like, if Kennedy wins, it's because, I mean, remember how Tony just loved the Kennedys for no reason he could actually describe? Like, that's why it's because, like, people in Massachusetts are that way. Like, most of, the venerated political experts and consultants, they're like Jim Messina or James Carville, just dopes. Like they're just throwing shit out there, and then their candidate wins or loses for whatever reason that they just never had on the placard, and they're like, oh yeah, no, it was because of refillable coffee cup moms.
I mean,
they hate
about
online stuff. They hate online bullying.
Think about this. They're trying to sell. They're trying to denounce a candidate as a bully in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And expecting people to not like him because of that.
I'm going to say Massachusetts has got to be one of the most pro-bullying states.
They love it.
Yeah.
Their state flag is a guy getting a swirly.
Massachusetts does PSAs of like new synonyms for gay that bullies can call children. Like, try these ones.
There's gonna be there's a new outside of Fenway Park, like there's sort of like the T-shirt sales. There's gonna be a new T-shirt you can buy that says that Jeter is a Markey.
Yeah, there is. I'm actually working on a new campaign for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The "It Gets Worse" campaign. Think it's bad now, fucking pussy.
I mean, and like, I guess the thing, like, I'm interested in this race because it's like, Ed Markey is not exactly like the second coming either. He's a pretty standard Democrat, but he just happens to be one that is, like I would say, like on the better side of the bell curve when it comes to Democratic.
Oh, he's
politicians.
definitely top quartile. Which, it's not difficult, but he is.
Yeah, he's at the height of the bell curve. He's not Irish. He has a very high IQ comparatively.
I'm pretty sure he's Irish, dude.
But he.
All right, I withdraw my support.
But he supports the Green New Deal.
He fucking wrote the legislation.
Yeah, and I mean he's for the decriminalization of marijuana, which is already decriminalized in Massachusetts. So I don't know why Joe Kennedy is holding out being against that at this point.
Well, he has said it's because when cops pull someone over, smelling weed or suspecting weed is a good excuse to do a search, and if it's legal, they won't be able to have that as a probable cause.
Oh well, okay, so that's just like a brief view into the some domestic politics. But let's talk about. I mean, we mentioned Fenway, we mentioned the captain, the number one most respected man in America, Derek Jeter. But let's talk a little baseball. Let's talk America's pastime, and I'm just gonna bring this up here. Just according to CNN here, Trump postpones first pitch at New York Yankees game. President Donald Trump said Sunday he's postponed his plan to throw out the opening pitch at a New York Yankees game next month, extending his run as the only modern president to not take part in this long-standing tradition.
I wonder the fuck why.
The president cited, quote, his strong focus on the coronavirus pandemic and the economy as reasons for the delay, but still promised we will make it later in the season.
The actual motive is that picture of him trying to catch a football, or no, he tried to catch a baseball.
It was a baseball, yeah.
He tried to catch a baseball on the White House lawn. He looked like he was going to get a mortar round to the stomach. He was terrified.
No, he was trying to catch like an underhanded throw of a baseball, and he was doing the thing with the glove that you do when you're a kid, and when you're afraid of the ball, you have the glove
his face
underhanded.
Was just a death rictus of terror.
Like you have the glove underhanded, like you're trying to catch it in a basket rather than like, out front and facing you, like, to sort of, swat it out of the air. He looked terrified of that ball approaching him. And this is a guy who claimed that when he was in high school, he was the best baseball player in the city of New York.
Absolutely. I believe it. Why would he lie?
And, and the thing is, like, this is coming on the heels of Dr. Fauci's disastrous first pitch at the Washington Nationals game in DC. That was just woo! Not only did it not get to the plate, it was just down. It was just across the fucking first baseline.
And the next day after this fucking asshole who everyone thinks is Mr. Too Damn COVID responsible just does a ritualistic blessing of, yeah, sure, baseball, why not? The entire Miami Marlins test positive for fucking COVID, and they're gonna have to just take them out back like fucking broke-legged racehorses.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's where I was going next with this baseball thing, because it's just like, yeah, like baseball has officially started their season, and they're putting like sort of movie standouts, like cardboard cutouts of fans in like the background, so that it doesn't look like empty on television. They're digitally adding like virtual NPCs to baseball games that you can pay for the privilege of having like a sort of like a 3-second loop of you like sipping a beer, sitting in your seat like behind home plate, added digitally to like broadcasts of Major League Baseball games. And yeah, it's turned into a fucking disaster, because as Matt mentioned, of course the team from Florida, like 30 players have tested positive for COVID. And in like baseball, it's like, if you're on the road, you're using like the teams are shuffling in and out of those locker rooms like every other day.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just like this seems like there's no fucking way that they're just going to have to stop it eventually, or just keep eliminating teams if they get a COVID test. Like the World Series will just be like the last team that doesn't have a positive test after like 30 or 40 games.
Yeah. Versus like the first 8 people who like went onto a website who were able to pass a COVID test on the other side.
But yeah, it's our national pastime. But yeah,
nine people in a baseball game. I'm aware of that.
But yeah, the thing with Trump is obviously like there is no chance that he would not humiliate himself throwing out a first pitch at a baseball game. Like, so that's why
the thought of Trump doing any human activity that normal people do is, I would want a super slow-mo version of it just to see the action ripple across his body.
This is a new body fat analysis test. I start you jiggling and measure how long it takes to stop. Woohoo! Look at that blubber fly!
Just like that's why the one thing, even more than throwing a ball, although that would be hilarious. My guess is that he would just like spike it into the first like 10 feet in front of the mound. But if he did, other than that, I've said this before, but I just would really love to see him fire a handgun.
I always you remember that story of him like punching Don Jr. for not wearing a suit to
a suit to the ball game.
Yeah. Well, like I always thought that was bullshit, because like Donald Trump would have to be hospitalized if he punched somebody.
No, he's never made a fist and connected with anything. He might have slapped him, but he absolutely didn't punch him.
Yeah, he slapped him with a glove.
Yes. You disgrace.
Yeah.
But just in line with like Trump and the ongoing like disastrous response to COVID in this country, I have a quote here from Trump from a press conference he did just the other day, and I just want to read this very brief segment of it. This is from his opening remarks to the press. He says here, this morning I spoke with President Putin of Russia, and they're going through a very hard time with this, in Moscow in particular. I spoke to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. They're doing well, but they're going through a lot. Everybody is going through a lot. Yesterday I spoke to the heads of 4 different countries. All 4 are going through a lot. They're going through a hard time. This could have been stopped. It could have been stopped quickly and easily, but for some reason it wasn't. And we'll figure out what that reason was.
I can't wait. I'll be glad to finally get to the bottom of this.
He's the Tim Robinson guy in the hot dog suit after crashing the hot dog car into the fucking store.
We're just trying to find out who did this. Or it's just like, or it's like the equivalent would be like Trump just being like, 150,000 dead from COVID in America. No signs that it's slowing down whatsoever. And if anything, it's only proliferating, and probably going to head to like a second spike in places like New York and elsewhere where it's gone down. It's just him like getting out there and just like his aides, of course, through the media. We've receiving many accounts that like, the people around him on his campaign are really urging him to adopt a more empathetic tone about this virus and really communicate to the American public how seriously he takes it and how like deeply he feels, like the loss of life and suffering that it's caused. And it would just be like, if he just comes out there and just says like, I can't help but feel partly responsible for how things turned out.
what was it? He, as recently as like a week ago, he was on record as saying, once again, for the millionth time, look, we have a lot of positive tests or positive results because we're testing people. If we didn't test them, there wouldn't be the cases. The idea that he's operating in his role as like pandemic response officer in chief from a position of not having object permanence, not understanding the idea of transmission of a communicable disease, being independent of your awareness of whether you have it or not. Maybe that had something to do with it a little bit.
I remember like months back, we talked about, like, to me, like the most chilling thing that's happened, during this pandemic is when he brought out that, like, that graph that just looked like just a pitch black hill of death. And he was like, look, 200,000, anything that comes in under that is a big win for us. Cause he was just saying like 200,000 deaths is acceptable. Whereas, like, well, we're at 150 now, and like I said, it shows no signs of slowing down. So there's a good chance we're going to blow past 200,000. And I've noticed that, like, the shift in the sort of, I don't know, COVID contrarians or defenders of the president have moved entirely, like that Alex Berenson guy who wrote the book about like the sort of reefer madness for the 21st century, who's become like the go-to, like just absolutely like lunatic ex-journalist who's made like this idea that like, oh, everyone's just freaking out over nothing and like this is all unnecessary, like it's not that big a deal, the cure is worse than the disease. Like he started out by saying,
not that big a deal, unlike weed.
Yeah,
I like the weed pandemic.
Hundreds of thousands of people killed by
super strong fucking strawberry cheesecake
by that strong pack.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So like, a lot of people like that Clay Travis idiot, like a lot of people were just saying like, look, I'd be surprised if even 1,000 people died of this disease.
Yeah.
And they were saying that in April. And now that it's at 150,000 dead, like they've switched entirely to just sort of saying like, well, look, like we're all going to die.
Yeah.
Like it's just, what
don't
are you
be
going to do?
afraid
Like,
to let your body die.
you can't just live in fear of death, like it's just a thing that happens. And the new statistic that they're trotting out is like, look, 2.8 million Americans die every year. Are we going to be afraid of that? And it's just like, now it went from 200,000 is the new victory number to any death toll lower than the number of overall Americans that die every single year. That's a win for us. That's a win. If it comes in under 2.8 million people dead, then
we're going to die. They died like a little bit early. They were going to die anyway. The thing is that if we actually embrace that fully as a culture, that kind of attitude towards death, we would be way healthier. We would be way better. But it only counts for these people in this case. Like, do any of them want to end the war on terror? Because how many people are realistically going to get killed by terrorism, even if we don't lift a finger? Not even forget even military occupations. Don't close the FBI's counterterrorism office. And I'm not joking. Do that. Because realistically, how many Americans are going to get killed by terrorism in a year? Even if you get rid of the TSA and everybody can
absolutely, just let anyone onto a plane,
onto an airplane. How many people are going to die?
Yeah, how many times have you fucking watched some fucking moron grope your kid while you're taking your shitty vacation to Galveston, and you're like, this is fine. We have to prevent against the 0.0001% chance that anyone will hijack this plane.
Yeah. Yes. And it's like we have these absurd, over-the-top things that other countries don't have, and it's not like people are doing the terrorism in the other countries on the airplanes that don't have what we do. But no, we're the number one target. Okay, fine. One guy a year. Maybe two guys a year. How many people is that? And the thing is, that's the correct attitude to have towards something like that, because you're talking about a real cost-benefit question. But here, it's a galloping fucking pandemic, and most importantly, not evenly distributed in exposure across populations. Concentrated, like most fucking illnesses and systemic pathologies in a culture, among the most vulnerable people. And these are all rich assholes saying, you people should be more willing to die. Because I guarantee you, if you sat them down and said, well, how many of your family members are you willing to lose to go to Fuddruckers? They'd say, of course, none, because they're already operating from an assumption that it can't touch them. Or maybe it kills an annoying old aunt that they were waiting to kick off anyway. And hey, now I get that armoire in her will.
No,
but you got to spend a night in the armoire.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say they're just waiting to spend a night in the spooky mansion to inherit it. That's all, Aunt Ethel I've been waiting for that broad to kick off forever, and then finally COVID did it for us. But yeah, I mean, like the other thing they point to is the just catastrophic number of people that die in car accidents or in homicides in America every year is sort of like, well, what are you going to do? Not drive a car? And I'm like, well, I mean, I understand that, like, technically, if you're under 35, you are more likely in this country to die in a mass shooting than of COVID, but that's not exactly reassuring, nor does it give me, like, hope that we're living in a functioning country. Because, I mean, we've talked about this before, and I think what COVID is really laying bare is that we are living in a failed state, but it's like two states. There's like the world's richest, most powerful country like ever in human history is just grafted on top of like a massive failed state. And that, like, if you're in that little circle at top, everything seems pretty fine to you. And that, like, well, America is working just as it was intended to for you. But it's just like 90% of the rest of the country is just, we're all just choking to death of fucking a disease or fucking dying in car accidents or shootings or fucking things that just simply don't happen in any other comparable country. Or if they do happen, not nearly at the fucking rate that it does here.
I said that shit about the fucking car accidents. I said that's what happened with cars. When cars showed up, they started killing people, and people were dying in huge numbers who were not dying before that. Kids were getting run over in the street who weren't used to looking both ways. And what the car industry did was invent jaywalking as a concept and make it into a crime so that it was your fault if you got run over by this new monstrous machinery instead of ever having any reckoning with what it was going to do to people. And then over time, we just normalized the deaths associated with it. And as soon as I could tell, as soon as the containment strategy failed because of lack of infrastructure, normalizing was the only way to go. And that's now where we are, like fully normalized. And that means that like everything else, it's just going to get absorbed into like the cultural firmament as a thing to abstractly argue about without any assumption that you can do any real thing about it. So yeah, grandma dies, grandpa dies, your uncle dies, you're sick for 3 weeks. Maybe your mom has an enlarged fucking inflamed heart for the rest of her life. And that's just more of the stuff that goes. And then you just yell at your cousin on Facebook about it. I just wanted to quote a tweet that Bill Mitchell did today. That is
hell yeah.
This is so perfect because to me this absolutely embodies the American mindset, the prosperity gospel that wraps up the minds of like our tick-like bourgeois. The virus is over because I said so. And if we all say so and start ignoring it, it will lose its power. It will lose its power over us, and the hashtag media will stop pushing it, and it will, from a propaganda standpoint, be over. Time for us to create a new reality here. On social media, hashtag ignore the virus.
He's right. He's 100% right.
I love him. That's so much, like, they should give him Alex Berenson's job because that's so much more, like, he's so much more philosophically interesting than really, like, any other conservative. Like, you think about his previous things, like, if there was a bee big enough to kill a human, like the condom that only covers the tip of your dick. Like, he's, like, clearly a man who's interested in the world in a way that, like, no one else is.
He is. And also, like this, like in episodes like this, he gets in a fundamental truth that other people are, I guess, too self-aware to allow to escape their mind, which is he's technically correct in that tweet because, I mean, all right, say we totally let COVID go wild. It's not going to probably end civilization, right? We'll probably be able to absorb it, even if you have a huge spike in hospitalizations and like a knock-on effect of people not being able to get care. It's going to bump up mortality, but not to a level that will necessarily endanger our infrastructure. If, while that's happening, we give up any hope that anything can be done about it and therefore stop talking about it and stop making it an issue. And all of a sudden, you have turned this thing into just one more part of being an American. You might get COVID when you go out. Well, you might get shot. You might get killed walking your doggy. and it's just another thing that we can't do anything about because our politics have occluded the possible, any possible alternative to this.
I just got one last thing here, and this comes courtesy of our Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. Obviously, we've talked about like there's this big sort of fight going on right now, and parents and politicians and communities all over the country about like do we just open up schools again in the fall? Because realistically, like we can't. kids are going to miss an entire year of education. Like parents, someone's got to take care of them. People got to go back to work.
That's the big thing is that they need if they're going to if they're going to coerce everybody to go back to work, then they need to have these kids in school.
So here is a quote from Betsy DeVos in an interview on the Conservative Circus on iHeartRadio from July 16th.
Oh, that sounds like a hell of a time.
I would love that.
Because the more I think about it, politics kind of is. It sort of is a clown show if you think about it.
Imagine, Bill Mitchell like putting the chair in front of the bear or whatever the fuck they do. That would be cool. I would love to go there.
Picture a dog and pony show, but it's a donkey and elephant show. Now you're thinking about the political circus.
That's very true.
Here is Betsy DeVos. Here's what she said. This is, again, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos. More and more studies show that kids are actually stoppers of the disease and they don't get it and transmit it themselves. So we should be in a posture of the default should be getting back to school kids in person in the classroom. So there you have it from Betsy DeVos. Children are stoppers of the disease. And what she was referring to is a study out of Germany that found that there was no evidence that school children played a role in spreading the virus. However, that study is currently undergoing peer review. It's going to by the Lancet, and I'm not saying that study is wrong, but the crucial detail left out of it, according to the author of the study, is quote. Our results depict a situation with low infection rates after the initial transmission peak is under control. If you have rising infection rates, as in the United States currently, putting people in close contact will obviously lead to a transmission of respiratory viruses as SARS-CoV-2.
Everything's fine. Everything's taken care of.
No, it's like the study is about Germany, a country that has handled this crisis like diligently and rationally and has seen good results. And the result, transmissions have gone down. Whereas, as Matt, you said, this virus is just ravaging across this country. So any results applied to America, our children will not be the stoppers.
No,
the children are not stoppers; they're goers. So there we go. Just another little, and then actually this segues nicely because as we know about Betsy DeVos, you guys remember who her brother is?
Yeah,
Eric Prince, and it has come out this week that the sort of like the federal orc cops that are being deployed to Portland to stop that federal courthouse from being ravaged by protesters are sourced from the basically the Border Patrol's own. It's a unit within the Border Patrol called BORTAC. That's like the Navy SEALs of the Border Patrol. And guess what? They hire directly out of Blackwater, out of Eric Prince's, the Secretary of Education's brother's private mercenary force. So this is what we're looking at here. These fucking orcs who are basically just shooting like moms, dads, grads, vets, kids, just blasting them in the head with fucking rubber bullets and tear gas canisters are being, handpicked by like the Blackwater Tahrir Square fucking squad. And the thing is, if we all could just forget about COVID or pretend it doesn't exist, like maybe we'd be better off. But the thing is, like that, the horse has left the barn on that. People are concerned about this. They're upset about it.
People want to live.
People value their lives and those of even strangers or neighbors.
Well, let's not go nuts.
To a certain degree. But, the thing is, like, it's unquestionable now that, like, the response to this in this country has been a fucking disaster. And it just, like, especially now that you're seeing, footage of other countries and they're out and about, they're loving life, they're having drinks outside, they're having fun with friends, they're living life. And this country, we're just still fucking stuck in this. I mean, like, and I don't think people are starting to cotton to it, but, like, I saw a tweet last week that was like it was a birthday cake and someone just added text to like a blank birthday cake and it was like, hey y'all, just a reminder to wear masks when you're outside, wash your hands and socially distance because if we don't, Halloween's going to be canceled this year. And I was like, there's no, we're not having a Halloween this year. There's nothing happening this year at all. Nothing.
Christopher Nolan still thinks that Tenet is going to be released in theaters. That's not happening, dude.
There's going to be no fucking Halloween this year.
No, we're having Halloween. We're having Halloween. Just listen to Bill Mitchell. If you imagine a world with Halloween, we're going to have Halloween. So start thinking about your costume right now.
Everyone should dress as a dead relative.
I would. You guys don't like the idea of like Zoom Halloween with the cast of Saturday Night Live?
Oh,
What, you don't
hey,
like that?
hey, the mega return of David Pumpkins. He's like, hey, I don't have
Yes.
COVID anymore. Everybody, it's so fucking random.
Yes. One of the costumes is like Joe Exotic, Donald Trump. Let's go, dude. Let's go.
I mean,
you
like,
could
we
have Carol Baskin Fauci.
Do you think Midsummer is too dated for this Halloween, or was that more of a last Halloween thing? Because I think it still holds up.
I think, I think you could still get in there. Midsummer, I think, is like with the meme potential for those costumes are still quite strong.
Can I tell you guys what I'm gonna do?
Please.
All right, so it's going to be like a big boxy thing on me that just says fax machine because I don't know what one looks like, but then it's going to say the word alternative on the back, and it's just going to be like, hey, remember this? Remember this for 3 years ago? Remember alternative fax? And then I'm just going to sort of like leave the party in anger when a David S. Pumpkin costume wins the Zoom Halloween party.
Leave meeting now.
Yeah.
But like my point is it just this is a political liability for Trump, and any way you put it, and to the extent that you take polls seriously, I mean that's being borne out. I mean it's just like obviously anything can happen, but I mean here's where I'm going with this. This is I'm leading into a very chilling Washington Post article that essentially reports that things like what you're seeing in Portland right now, and this like insane level of like police violence, like the orcs rampaging through our streets and brutalizing protesters, and as they're egged on by Trump supporters and the president himself, is essentially a campaign tactic. That you create viral videos of like liberals and black people and enemies of the president being brutalized by his private, like his just own personal sort of Sadhukar legion. And it's called it's called Operation Diligent Valor. Can you believe that shit? And it just says here, this began with like just sort of Trump's executive orders to use the Department of Homeland Security to protect statues of Confederate generals and slavers. And it says here the order signaled Trump's eagerness to mobilize federal power against the societal upheaval that had coursed through America since George Floyd's death. He sought to frame and create a culture war, right versus left, right versus wrong, and was taking a stand at the monuments that some view as historical homages and many others view as symbols of oppression. Sinking in the polls over his handling of the coronavirus pandemic, Trump seized a chance to appear as a field general in a wider American cultural conflict over racial justice, police misconduct, and the re-examination of American history and monuments. In Portland, he found a theater for his fight. And it just goes on to like just document like the ways in which like these sort of pitched battles between his sort of federal security forces and protesters are like it's a conscious strategy of escalating to create, as they say, viral video moments that he can put in campaign ads and that he can juice his supporters with. And it just just get his base excited about it because, like, as we've talked about many times before in this campaign, on this show, what they're offering people is the punishment of their enemies. It certainly isn't like any building a wall or ending, bad trade deals or improving anyone's, quality of life. But what they are offering his supporters is the now like literal violence against the people that you don't like. And like these sort of symbolic representations of the grandkids that don't talk to you, the black people that you're afraid of, like the college professors that have, turned your children against you or shit like that. And I really think like the worse this coronavirus gets and like the further he sinks in the polls, like the greater escalation of violence on the behalf of these like, BORTAC SWAT units are going to be. And not only that, but violence among the, like people just freelancing on their own. I mean, just the other night in Austin, a guy was murdered by someone in his car for stopping his car. I just bring it up here. His name was Garrett Foster. He was a protester, was shot and killed after an altercation with a motorist who apparently tried to aggressively drive past marching protesters at a downtown intersection. Foster was openly carrying an AK-47 during the protest, which is legal to do in Texas. Austin police announced on Sunday night that the driver said he fired on Foster after he pointed his rifle at the car, while some witnesses have said Foster did not. The law enforcement investigation is ongoing. And this was a guy just shot from, a guy in his car. And he was there apparently with his partner, who was a quadriplegic, and he was pushing her in a wheelchair when this happened. But I think back to our most recent episode with Dan Beckner when we talked about like the Gabriel Wortman type figures of like this sort of serial killer mindset, where like one of the most common denominators is this like weird reverence and hatred for law enforcement for like not accepting you or thinking you could be a better cop than the cops. And I think the question is, it's like, obviously Trump has given the go-ahead to his own federal goon squad, but like among his supporters, it's like, it's an open question about how explicitly like the permission he's going to give them to engage in their most violent fantasies is going to play out. And I've spoken before that I at least hold out some hope that America as a population or the demographics of our country that are most interested in some sort of violent counterinsurgency style civil war against their political enemies are essentially too old and lazy to ever really follow through with it in any organized fashion. But the caveat to that is if you can do it from your front porch or just sitting in your car, there's really nothing that these people wouldn't countenance or like are incapable of carrying out.
Absolutely. I do think it's funny that a lot of people have been freaking out rightly about this huge escalation in federal authoritarianism, and of course destroying the entire federalist tradition in one swoop that all these conservatives claim they give a shit about by just ignoring the requests of governors and mayors in order to create these escalations of conflict. And they're rightly pointing out that this is establishing new standards and it's setting precedents that are terrifying, and that in the future will absolutely be utilized to quell dissent in the face of growing anger and alienation. But it's all just because this dumbass wants some good campaign ads, because all he can do is press the culture war button and the TV button. And it really goes to show that no matter what our discrete personalities of our presidents are, and what their motivations might be, like Barack Obama spent 8 years trying to de-escalate culture war. I know Republicans will go insane to hear me say that, but it's true. You guys just couldn't accept that because especially after the fucking 2008 collapse, there's no way the culture war was going to do anything other than escalate, because people were fucking miserable and they'd all lost their goddamn houses and jobs and money and shit. It was going to get worse. And he unlike Trump, who tries to stoke it, he tried to tamp it down. But what did he really do? What's his real legacy? Expanding authoritarian precedents for the use of force abroad and at home. And that's the only thing that happens, no matter what the discrete motivations of these guys are. The only thing they end up doing is enriching the power of the office to suppress their own citizens and people in other countries.
Here's the actual quote here. It says, one of the officials said the White House had long wanted to amplify strife in cities, encouraging DHS officials to talk about arrests of violent criminals in sanctuary cities and repeatedly urging ICE to disclose more details of raids than some in the agency were comfortable doing. It was about getting viral online content, one of the officials said. U.S. Representative Peter T. King, a New York Republican and Trump ally, said he understands why federal reinforcements are in many of the cities and argued that mayors are embarrassing themselves. I understand why the feds are here. Something has to be done, King said, noting that he believes any action should be only in certain places. You have to be careful how far you go and what you do. Thanks, Peter King. I mean, that, by the way, that doesn't extend to the Irish Republican Army, and certainly not sending British troops to any cities like Belfast or Derry or anything like that. If that's the case, woo, boys, it's open season on those boys. Up the raw. And so that's that. But like, okay, this moves into the last thing I want to talk about, which is this is an article from the Boston Globe. The headline is, a bipartisan group secretly gathered to game out a contested Trump-Biden election. It wasn't pretty. Now, this is about like this sort of like think tank that was assembled to sort of essentially role play a scenario in which Trump loses the 2020 election, or like either closely or decisively, and decides simply not to leave office. Now, this is something that many liberals have just sort of been goosing themselves with. It's like this boogeyman of like, oh, like we're not even going to have an election, or Trump's not going to leave office. And I've been sort of somewhat skeptical of that, because essentially for me, it comes down to really do that, you would need the backing of the military, like they would be the tiebreaker in any
Right.
situation like this. And I truly don't have any, like, I don't believe that the military really thinks that Trump is like reliable enough or on their side enough to essentially do a coup in this country. Like, I just
No.
don't think he's
To protect against the threat of Joe Biden becoming president. No.
Yeah. But I mean, it is interesting, and like the article is pretty interesting, and I think it's worth considering because, like, I mean, let's be honest. Like, is there any scenario too fucking insane at this point to like completely write off out of hand? Like, I don't fucking know. But let's just hear it. It begins here. It says, on the second Friday in June, a group of political operatives, former government and military officials, and academics quietly convened online for what became a disturbing exercise in the fragility of American democracy. The group, which included Democrats and Republicans, gathered to game out possible results of the November election, grappling with questions that seemed less far-fetched by the day. What if President Trump refuses to concede a loss, as he publicly hinted he recently might do? How far could he go to preserve his power, and what if Democrats refuse to give in? All our scenarios ended in both street-level violence and political impasse, said Rosa Brooks, a Georgetown law professor and former Defense Department official who co-organized the group known as the Transition Integrity Project. She described what they found in bleak terms. The law is essentially, it's almost helpless against a president who's willing to ignore it. Using a role-playing game that is a fixture of military and national security planning, the group envisioned a dark 11 weeks between Election Day and inauguration, one in which Trump and his Republican allies used every apparatus of government, the Postal Service, state lawmakers, the Justice Department, federal agents, and the military to hold on to power, and Democrats took to the courts and streets to stop it. First of all, I would like to get, at least for Virgil, a copy of the sort of like Dungeon Master's manual for this sort of federal role-playing gaming system. It sounds pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah. What are the classes?
Well, I think they just said here, Postal Service, state lawmaker, Fed.
Patriot, emergency podcaster, Dr. Eugene Goo, that's his own class.
You need the expansion to play as Goo.
Yeah, it's worth it, though.
Going ahead here, it says, he doesn't have to win the election, said Niles Gilman, a historian who leads research at a think tank called the Berggruen Institute and was an organizer of the exercise. He just has to create a plausible narrative that he didn't lose. We have norms in our transition rather than laws, said Rachel Kleinfeld, a senior fellow in democracy, conflict, and governance program at the Carnegie Foundation, who was not part of the game. The entire election season is something a democracy expert should worry about. Essentially what they're pointing out is true, is that, we don't have laws to govern the sort of the peaceful transfer of power in this country. We just have norms. And, Trump has certainly shown no regard for them heretofore and has made, hints in recent interviews that he believes that like mail-in ballots are going to essentially delegitimize the entire election. What do you guys make of this?
I think it's unlikely. It's just kind of a lot of liberal worrywart shit because in order to put all this together, Trump needs the backing of this sprawling bureaucracy, and he hasn't really completed his project of replacing career bureaucrats with apparatchiks who are loyal to him. He also has a relatively small pool of people who are willing to fight and die for Trump. It's more... He's more filling these roles with conservative opportunists and people who are just kind of looking out for themselves and their opportunities in the private sector. And the other thing is, I think Trump genuinely does not want to continue being president.
Yes.
The only thing he's concerned about is just, getting the W to brag about it and say, yeah, I'm a two-termer. Like that's the end goal. Once I've done that, I've completed all of my ambitions. I've gotten the high score. Also, he can make, at this point, he can make a lot more money in the private sector, which is why it's really funny that he and his family do this ticky-tacky fucking corruption, like overbilling the government to stay at his fucking resorts and shit, when, he has an audience of millions, tens of millions of slavering imbeciles who are ready to give him their money.
Yeah, that to me, other than the military, would be the check on Trump refusing to, concede a loss in the election, is that I don't think he wants to be president at all. I think he hates it. He hates
He's doing badly at it.
He would be so much happier. He wouldn't be happy, but he would just be like, as close to not being miserable as he could be, not being president. But again, I sort of pull that back a little bit when I just think that like my analysis, like in thinking about him, that like his primary motivation in life is just not being seen as a loser or being seen as weak. And the question is, how far would he go to avoid having to turn on the TV and have to, see himself talked about in the terms of being a loser or a failure?
I think
to what degree, like to how far would he break like the norms of American governance and like our peaceful transition of power to avoid just like feeling that embarrassment?
Well, the thing I don't think is going to happen is like if he just says I don't accept the results, it doesn't matter. The U.S. Marshals will just take him out of there. It's not a big deal, and he wouldn't do that because that would look even worse. So he would back down like the coward he is. The way that this could happen, the one I've thought of that seems like it's the only one that's possible, is there's some sort of specious lawsuit that goes, because you talk about how the Trump people have not thoroughly taken over the bureaucracy, but they've done a pretty good job in the last 3.5 years taking over the fucking judiciary, thanks to Mitch McConnell and his laser-like focus on filling judicial appointments. So if there's a specious lawsuit challenging the results in 1 or 2 states based on some bullshit, and it makes it to the 5-4 Supreme Court, they rule in Trump's favor, and maybe they throw it to the House of Representatives where they vote each state votes. What would the Democrats or anyone else do about that? Because then he doesn't need the military to break with norms to defend his grab for power. He is following procedures. He has been anointed by the constitutional order of operations. And then what? People are going to go in the streets and die for Joe Biden?
It depends exactly what the controversy is going to be, because as it looks right now, Joe Biden is probably on track for something in the mid to low 300s in electoral votes, and that's a pretty ironclad margin at that point. I mean, you can read the scoreboard. This isn't like a Bush v. Gore type situation. Okay, that's obviously more controversial and more easy to screw around with and steal the election, like Bush did in 2000.
And by the way, and that Al Gore allowed to happen because he didn't want to kick up a fuss and he wanted to preserve like the sort of the peaceful norms of America. But he
don't beat up the Supremes is what he famously told his.
Yeah, exactly. Like he thought like him conceding was more important to the country and allowing George Bush to essentially steal that election.
Loser
I mean, like. So I mean, don't underestimate like the role playing scenario that they were gaming out here did depend on the Democrats contesting this. But I think now, I think they would definitely contest it rather than. But I think they're pot committed to like getting Trump out of office at this point. And I think there's basically nothing they wouldn't do to fight this if they thought it was being robbed from them by a guy like Donald Trump.
Also, the other thing is this is a stealing election this way is a very complex matter, and Trump in his life has never crafted a complex plan.
Yeah, he hasn't, but that doesn't mean that there aren't Dracula-like ghouls probably who cut their teeth stopping the ballots being counted in Palm Beach as part of the Brooks Brothers riot, which was coordinated by recently pardoned dirty trickster Roger Stone himself. There are people there who could do the shit. He doesn't have to do it. There's an entire party that is based around winning elections illegitimately. Like that's their number one tactic now, is reducing the electorate through fair means and mostly foul. And then squeaking out wins using suppression and outright theft. They're already very skilled at that. And they're going to be doing it on his behalf.
Again, it requires a very, very close election, which I don't think.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I do think.
I mean, we're talking about the scenario we're talking about isn't just the sort of mundane voter suppression tactics and ballot stuffing and the shit that Republicans do. We're talking about Trump like looking at the score and saying, "No, that's bullshit. I actually won." I'm saying nobody around him is going to follow him at that point because their self-interest does not lie in him. Nobody around him is loyal to him.
No, I agree with that completely. If he gets blown out, everyone will just like avoid eye contact with him, and then he'll just walk away. I agree with that. But I don't think you can assume a blowout no matter what the polls say.
Sure.
Well, I do think that if in the 45 days before the election, it looks clear enough to people that he's going to lose and lose badly, people will start distancing themselves then. And in that case, it would be harder for him to, develop a core of support for a coup. And there's also the problem of they couldn't even really fully repeal Obamacare. Like, these are incompetent people. And there's, like, morally no limit to what they'll do, but there is a logistical limit to what they're able to pull off.
Yeah,
it's kind of a
right.
similar limit to what Bolsonaro is running into. I mean,
Yes.
they more openly
And by
want
wait,
to do...
are you talking about emus?
Yeah. No, the same problem. Yeah, they're both tormented by emus.
They both routinely get COVID every week and get bitten by an emu every other day.
Well, I think
as they try to offer hydrochloroquine.
I love that he's still on that shit. It, like, Trump's dropped that like 2 months ago, and Bolsonaro is still on that tip.
Well, that does track because Brazil gets our pop music like 4 years after we do, and so like they're like, if like Cage the Elephant came to Brazil, they would become the emperors. Like, they would depose Bolsonaro. So like, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, they're probably going to get the Karen meme in 2026 and love it.
Carino.
Yeah. Carino.
Do you think we could convince? I mean, I guess Bolsonaro, like in Brasilia, there's just emus out and about, or you can go and hang out with them. I mean, it seems pretty cool. I wouldn't want to get nipped by one, but do you think we could convince Bolsonaro somewhere, somehow, maybe our Brazilian listeners, to just start hanging around cassowaries, maybe?
Yeah. Hey, Jair, there's that bird you love arguing with.
I love. The human race is so fucking pathetic. Like, Bolsonaro is one of a handful of people who is like at most directly threatening the continued existence of life on this planet, and the only people trying to murk his ass are fucking emus.
I like this.
The only people who understand the stakes are giant flightless birds.
Well, you know what? They defeated Australia's army once.
They did.
You know, who's to say that they can't topple, fascism in Brazil?
Arm the emus, folks. I'm in favor of. This is the one foreign policy thing I will go on. Don't fund the FSA, for the love of God. Fund the emus.
I like how
give them the guns.
I like how it's happened twice, and like what was the thought process the second time? Like, that was just a meme.
I'll show you.
That was just.
You think you could bite? He was probably trying to bite the bird back.
Yeah, that family rules, because like those kids are dumber than the Trump sons.
They
like,
are
by far.
amazingly.
Yeah.
They somehow are dumber than fucking Don Jr. and fucking Eric, who are absolute guppy brains.
And I love that Trump has like a Stevie from Eastbound and Down. Like, even he's sort of put off by Bolsonaro's like toadish enthusiasm towards him.
Oh my God, that's
absolutely it.
Oh my
Like,
God,
calm down.
it's like,
Calm down.
Yeah,
it's just the next like big international summit. Jair is going to show up wearing one of those giant blousey suits, just like Trump has, like pant cuffs the size of fucking like an elevator shaft, and he's just like, "Hey, Trump, you like my new look?" And then he's just like, "Just change yourself for me."
I could definitely see him getting a chin implant. That's for sure.
Oh God, he needs one.
So
he needs one badly.
The Bolsonaros are horrible criminals and like have definitely directly ordered the deaths of people.
Oh, yeah.
In Rio de Janeiro politics, but like also like they're so funny. I mean, I guess that's like sort of get used to that type of person. Just someone who's so funny and fucked up and buffoonish, but is also like, oh yeah, this person's murdered like 20 communist activists, like personally. That's going to be like half the presidents we get, and the other half will be like Macron types. Joe Biden is really like the last of his type. He's the last sort of like doddering old centrist manager. Everyone else is just going to be like a sort of neoliberal crackhead who says they're a Jupiterian god. Or like, a guy who's constantly at war with like Chinese salamanders.
Showing up to a press conference and like up to their calf is just like they're deep in a fucking one of those giant Japanese salamanders.
Yeah. We're like
it's just slowly working its way up their leg, and they're just like
we're dealing with this.
Yeah, look, it's under control here.
Yeah,
I can't wait for the Yugoslav war to crack off again due to the provocations of a man known as the Serbian Guy Fieri.
Yeah, we're going to have like Josh Hawley and Tom Cotton, all the guys we think we have to be afraid of. They're going to lose the next Republican primary to like a guy that's constantly getting caught in Venus flytraps. Just something we thought only happened in cartoons.
Me and my son are currently joined at the genitals through a Chinese finger trap. So we'll be doing all press conferences face to face now. But please do not make fun of us.
Also,
That's cyberbullying.
Also, I've personally killed like 50 unarmed activists.
Oh yeah,
like, that's the future,
they drove a Mack truck over fucking like people sitting in the front of on a highway.
They're gonna have the G7 in a pit of quicksand, just slowly sinking into it and talking about like exchange rates and shit.
Everything that happened to people in Man from U.N.C.L.E. will happen to the conservative leaders of tomorrow.
Yeah, but you know what? They'll all survive it. Though.
Absolutely.
You know,
none of them can die.
Bolsonaro will drive a car at 90 miles an hour into a tunnel that's painted into a wall by a coyote or something of some kind, and he'll go straight through the windshield into the fucking wall, and then just the next day he'll be given the thumbs up from like a hospital in traction.
He is the most hospitalized man in the world. Like I can't. He's sort of like gonna be the Obama of people with neck braces. Like he's gonna be the first world leader in a neck brace.
I'm currently involved in a lawsuit against the Acme company.
Yeah.
Happy 80th birthday to Bugs Bunny, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
The
real one.
anniversary of the first Bugs Bunny cartoon today. But like, I guess like this gets to the last thing I want to say in terms of this like this role playing scenario, and by that I mean like not a hot one, not a cool sexy one, but like a really bleak and awful one. Is like. I think we're like not really all that afraid of like because even if like Trump decides to like contest this election or not concede it, it's hard to imagine like the levers of power or like the things lining up to essentially allow him to do that, or that like thinking that he was reliable or good enough that would be worth doing. I mean, they might do it if it looked like Bernie Sanders would win the fucking presidency. That's
honestly,
for sure.
Possibly,
yeah.
I mean,
But like, with Joe Biden, they have a sure thing right there, and they're not going to fuck up. Why fuck and why mess with a good thing? And that's that. But I was just going to say, like, just back to like the example of that fucking psycho who just murdered that guy in Austin because he was standing in front of his car. Or like I said, like the Gabriel Wortman type of like wannabe law enforcement serial killers in this country, is that like the factor is like regardless of the outcome, whether it's like a close election or Trump loses very convincingly, a good chunk of his base and the Republican Party will simply not view the results of any election that goes against them to be legitimate at all. And I think there's a question of like that, how far do they really want to push it? I just saw yesterday about how Louis Gohmert's campaign just beat the shit out of his challenger's campaign manager in Texas.
Yeah, that's an escalation.
Yeah.
So
That's
I mean, like that's it. It's
things
like
up several notches.
I mean, like this is just sort of what I was getting at with like the second half of this show is that like Trump has explicitly given permission to, basically like a federal fucking like like death squad. I mean, almost to escalate violence in liberal cities against people that he regards and his supporters regards as enemies of the president and enemies of the country, black people, college students, just anyone who opposes them and can be tagged as being, I don't know, fascist, communist, Antifa, terrorist groups or whatever. Like privately hired mercenaries, or he's given them like the explicit green light to fucking do whatever they want to any protester, anyone who challenges their authority. But like in terms of the people who are just his supporters and who are not currently employed by the Border Patrol or ICE or fucking Blackwater or something like that, the freelancers, the wannabes, the fucking losers. I mean, it's not like he's had to like dog whistle these people. It's more like a foghorn. But I think the question is like, how explicit will the permission be for them to live out the fantasies that they love sharing with people on social media? And I think I've spoken about this before, but like authoritarian personalities and that is the personality type who makes up most of the president's supporters and pretty much all right-wingers or conservatives in this country in general, they seek permission for the things that they want to do from guess who? Authority figures. And Trump is their authority figure. And then like, it's just like, it's an open question. I don't think they'll get very far with it, but I mean, I think we're long past the point where like, I think like that good 30% rump of this country simply does not regard political authority that they don't agree with as legitimate. And the question is like, just how big of an asshole can one be up to the point of, mass murder? Are you going to see people take it? And, I don't know. It's an open question. I'd like to tell myself that essentially people are doing what everyone else does, which is talk shit on the internet and just sort of vent their spleen. But, I mean, we've seen, examples of it going in a completely other way, leading to terrible outcomes. So, I don't know. That's an open question for me. I don't know how to feel about it.
For my entire life, and I'd say really since about the 50s or 60s, Americans are way more into talking than doing, but maybe that changes. I mean, one way that you become a talker rather than a doer is if your quality of life is at the standard and your biggest fear is it falling away from that. But that is happening. I mean, people can't even afford to have kids. So let's see.
Well, but there's the problem with any claim about like the people doing anything, either good or bad, is in both cases total atomization and lack of coordination. Like people are more willing to do something that violates like not just the law but serious ethical things if they feel like they're doing it with other people. And the illusion of the internet, I mean, I think we've seen the degree to which the feeling that you have a community online doesn't translate into feeling like you have any standing to coordinate your activities with anybody else in the real world.
I would agree with that.
I think like if Trump loses, you're definitely going to see lone wolf attacks, like some oaf trying to like drive into the Congress in a fucking ATV with a bazooka around his shoulders. But that's going to be it. We're atomized. We are uncoordinated. We have no political or social concepts or abilities that we can exploit to direct political alienation anywhere other than just personal expression.
Right.
So,
or on the other side, we've had 4 years of like, another half of the country basically saying that we are being ruled by a hostile foreign entity. And the only like physical manifestation of that was just like one goofball hitting Steve Scalise in his fat thigh.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I do think you're right about that, but I do think the result of that is, an increase in lone wolf behaviors.
I mean,
on every side.
Can you imagine QAnon supporters trying to do like a fucking Declaration of Independence or like Continental Congress or like pull off an organized American revolution? Like they can't even decide which celebrities have been cloned and executed or not.
Well,
I mean, like how quickly would that just split into like a fractal, like ongoing war against each other? Well, like it just,
who's like one of the only groups of people in America that still does things together, and why I think they would be eventually the kings in a broken up, destroyed America, it would be the Mormons.
Absolutely.
The Mormons do like lame activities with each other. They do like,
sack races.
Yeah, I was literally going to say sack races. But like, they're killers. They're killers. They're kind of like what every American used to be.
Yeah, no
like.
shit. The CIA knows that very well.
Yeah.
They love the Mormons.
They perfected being Americans. They are the descendants of the most far-sighted febrile minds of mid-19th century America who saw somehow, they couldn't articulate it probably, but they saw the fundamental incongruity between European Christianity and the American project, and also the centrality of capitalism, but also the poison pill that it represented to like their social cohesion. And they perfected both Protestantism and then capitalism and fused them together. They're the only people who like solve the meta of the United States.
Yeah, no,
so they will rise from the ashes.
They understood it. They will rule over us. I mean, it's amazing how far this country tried to go, pretending we believed in like Northern European Protestantism. The thinking where like I would say their core ideology past religion is that it's like good to suffer. It's good to feel bad. Could you think of anything less American than that?
Yeah. No, like the whole promise of America is eternal indulgence.
Yeah,
because of its resource plentitude. Like they even solved the problem of eternity and the problem of like of God as a concept being compatible with like individual like eternal spirituality, because heaven doesn't really make sense. So the more you're gonna like being anywhere forever doesn't work. The time-bound concept of the human ego does not correspond to the concept of eternity. So what do? They say, no, if you do a good enough job in heaven, you get to be God.
Right, because nothing bedevils people in modernity more than the idea of time. It's why you
Yes.
see so many fucking crackpot statements about time. Like the people, oh, the Zoomers are going to save us, or the Zoomers are based, or, it's all, everyone has this fundamental fear of time. So it gets turned into time is fundamentally on our side because it's the only interaction we have with the only physical interaction we have with something on the level of a god. So it terrifies us so much that we decide that it's fundamentally with us, with whatever we believe. But Mormons solve that problem. Yeah. You will ascend and become time.
Yep.
It won't daunt over. It won't be this daunting thing over you because you will be it.
And they realize that capitalism cannot work, that over time capitalism will dissolve social bonds to such a degree that any polity you think you're building in America is going to not be recognizable to your descendants. It will be something monstrous to you, inevitably, because capitalism dissolves everything. Like they in some way, I think they got it because they now have suborned in their little pocket capitalism to their social order. Like their economy is just like paying each other to like do the shingles on the roof or like install a swimming pool for the guys, and then the gals go out down into their unfinished basements every weekend and sell each other multi-level marketing products, which for everybody else in America, MLM is a scam because you run out of friends. But you'd never do that if you're a Mormon.
Yeah, guess what are the only groups in America who's still having kids and can afford to? It's them. So they're not running out of people anytime soon like the rest of us chumps.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you want to spend eternity? Playing a harp, hanging out with the angel Gabriel and the founding fathers and, Jimi Hendrix or whatever? Or do you want to actually live on the ring world from Halo, tooling around in your own warthog with your family, with all your friends and family, but you're actually living in Halo?
And you're the god of that ring.
Yes. You get everything that goes on there is under you. You get all of the opposite of all the fear and doubt that you lived your life in, you get to experience forever.
Yeah, maybe we should become Mormons. They not a bad
model. Not a bad model, honestly. Well, I think we should probably wrap it up for today. But I would actually like to take this time at the end of the show, as long as we're talking about eternity, love, indulgence, and kindness, to recognize a little personal news from our producer and brother, Chris. Our good friend Chris got married this weekend. Woo! I would just like to extend on behalf of Chapo Trap House and our listenership wishes for many, many happy years in the future with you and your absolute queen, Molly. Molly is someone who is not just an absolute ace and a queen for Chris. She has been a queen for all of Chapo, coming on the road with us, shooting footage. She's been our unofficial cinematographer for a lot of the stuff we've done, of the live shows and the short films we've done. So I would just like to extend a hearty congratulations to Chris and Molly. They were originally going to get married in June, but COVID put a big damper on all of that. So I think bravely and correctly, you just decided to say fuck it and just do a tiny, small, quick marriage and just stop delaying and get on with get on into the future. So eternal love and congratulations to both Chris and Molly.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, guys.
Congrats, guys.
Thank you guys very much. I just had to plug in my microphone to say thank you. It was a very lovely ceremony. I'm glad that it had happened. I'm glad to be able to share it with you guys and through the show, all the fans. And I'm most of all glad that I did get a Twitter shout out from Marianne Williamson on the day of the wedding, wishing us
the greatest gift you could possibly imagine.
That blesses the union.
So that was it felt like a small blessing of its own.
The good witch has blessed your union with the power of the orb. All right, I think to go out today, I think we should just we should throw on. It's just there's this new electronic musician, is a new electronic artist out there who's pretty fire, and I think I like him. We all like him. I'd like to share him with you. I'm talking, of course, about DJ D Saul. He is the Goldman Sachs DJ. I think he's like the vice president of Goldman Sachs, who moonlights as a fucking as a DJ. He's a beatsmith. So I think let's just go out with sharing the excellent vibes of DJ D Saul. Yes, hear that.